All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Working Towards Black. Uh, Working Towards Black is a series in an effort to mend, grow, build, understanding, relationships, connections between the diaspora, within the diaspora, to the continent of Africa, and to really start to create understanding, to dispel myths. And today I have a lovely, lovely, lovely couple, Katrina and Nmuta.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, my African friends try to play me about my pronunciations, so I tried to practice before we started. They're like, "Yeah, you need to get on your African names. Your pronunciations are not great." And a beautiful African American couple, I think, but we're gonna find out more about them. And welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Tanisha.
So I'm gonna read a little bit. I did not get a chance to get your bio, Katrina, but I would love for you to introduce yourself. I would tell you that Nmuta, Nmuta? Okay.
Yeah, that was perfect.
It was good? Okay, good. Is an African American software engineer and technology educator. When Nmuta, you're really going to challenge me today with the names, was about 8 years old. He joined a Nigerian family through the marriage of his mother to his stepfather, Adeyinka Cole, and that changed his life forever. His early formative years were spent in Black American / Nigerian family and in Illinois. And when he was 15, his stepfather passed unexpectedly, which served as a catalyst for him to learn more about his history as an African American and his family in Nigeria. And so tell me more about you, Katrina. I definitely wish that I had something to introduce you, but I'd like for you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Sorry. I have to say, my face is numb right now. I just came from the dentist and my face is numb. So
Still beautiful.
Excuse my lane or whatever. Well, I am a Denver native, and I'm going to skip to what I think is the good part. What I'm doing now is all about health and wellness. I have found my calling. It's something that I've done all my life in different ways. I've been a serial entrepreneur since I was in elementary school selling Michael Jackson buttons. And so now I have really found my calling, which is to help us get well and to stay well. And by doing so, we're bringing out the goddess and God and goddesses that dwell in us, that we were really born with. So that is the path that I am on. I don't know if I'm supposed to say what the specifics are in terms of
a
name.
We'll get into it.
Yeah,
we'll definitely get into it.
Okay, I'll follow your lead on that.
And what about you? Tell me some more of your history as a child.
So yeah, for me, my dad is from the Bronx, my mom is from Queens, and so my parents split when I was 5, amicably, but they still split, and then we married into a Nigerian family from my mom. So I stayed and lived with my mom when we were about 8, when I was about 8, and like I said, it really changed my life a lot. Like we then had, for me, Nigeria was a frame of reference because my stepfather, we called him Daddy Yinka because it sounds like Ade Yinka. We wouldn't say Ade Yinka at that age, so we'd say Daddy Yinka. So, we would call Daddy Yinka. Like he was a very strong presence, in our lives, very kind of alpha presence, and he was always talking about Nigeria, talking about, you don't know anything, like like Nigeria is better than this, like everything was
African accent. I love the Nigerian
everything in
accent.
Nigeria was better, like we almost thought the streets were paved with gold in Nigeria because there was so many, like, because because he would talk about a lot of positive things that in reality, he missed home.
Yeah.
But what that meant for me as a Black American is that my first introduction to Africa was positive because it came through family. And then, we'd be waking up in the morning and we'd hear Yoruba over the phone, like, ekusheo, this like loud at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it just became a part of everything. We would eat stew. He would make soup, like groundnut soup. He made that. I think that was his one dish, but I'm telling you, he could rock some groundnut stew now. We would have that pretty much every day. You mean like maybe, like 6 days out of the week, 5-6 days of the week. Make a big pot of stew and we eat that. We didn't have eba like fufu or anything like that. We did with rice, plantain. And so that was our diet. We eat this, and he was always talking about Nigeria and everything. So that was kind of my initial exposure. And then we used to get teased. I mean, I don't look Nigerian phenotypically, but we would get teased by the other kids because they, for all intents and purposes, that was my dad when this was in Illinois. And then we'd get in trouble. If I got in trouble at school and the kids would be, oh, we heard those African war drums beating, you're going to get a whooping, And it's like we were teased because we were from the African, It was interesting on my brother, Sekou, I think that he internalized it in a way that I don't think that he really romanticized it on the level that I did because he had kind of a different experience. And so there was some divergence there, I think, a little bit in it. And also I was the oldest and we experienced that, I think, a little differently. But the bottom line was that it was that was our initial experience to West Africa. And of course, like later, I went to go live in Nigeria. And then all the things that I had from growing up started to make sense. And the food we ate the same thing I was eating back home. We ate that every day in Nigeria. And so it started to connect the dots, but it connected dots on some deeper levels that I think that a lot of African Americans would relate to. Then when we talk later about further implications of living in Africa in another part of our conversation. So yeah, that was my experience as a child.
Did you have positive experiences, Katrina, when you were thinking and talking about Africa? Did you even think about it at all in Denver?
Definitely. So my household was interesting. My parents also divorced when I was quite young, but my dad, we grew up with my mom, but my father was still very much involved. And between the two of them, our household was a Black, Christian, Muslim, fight the power household version of Christianity. And I thought everybody was like that. I didn't even know, that people had all these issues with Christianity because, I grew up knowing about the Black presence in the Bible. I grew up knowing that Jesus was a man of color in the scripture where it says what he looked like, and his hair was thick and curly with no Jerry curl at all. That's scripture. And so, I
do think that is in the King James Version. I think they reference Jerry curls in the King James Version.
Yes, so you see what I mean. That's what I grew up with. And so absolutely, I had a great thoughts. I had great thoughts and a great perception of what Africa was, what African people were. And so much of that came through my mother and my father's influence. And so, yeah, absolutely. And in spite of being in Denver, in spite of being the only in a lot of spaces, my mind and my heart was solidly based in our culture as African American people.
Interesting. I mean, I think that, I've been talking to a lot of people, and you always wonder like what that point is where people start to shift and see Africa differently. Because growing up at the times we're growing up, the television is not producing these images for us. And so it really does take your family to be able to kind of shift and grow these ideas. So my next question is, you guys now have like a fascinating story of where the work you're doing and the things you're doing. And right now, from what I understand, most of it revolves around Ethiopia. tell me like how this materializes in your lives, and at what point did you guys meet and then decide to do this together?
Mm.
You can go. You can
That's
take
such
that
a,
one.
well, so for me, my father, rest his soul, he who has passed on, he could look in a lot of different, he could fit in a lot of different cultures, but he definitely looked Ethiopian. And I believe it was with the Clinton administration, where people got the visa lottery. Wasn't that under Bill Clinton?
It was the
I
90s.
think it was
So I
under
think that was Bill
Bill
Clinton,
Clinton.
probably.
See, there was that anesthesia. But anyway, so at that time, there started to be an influx of Ethiopian people in Denver.
Hmm.
And so you would see some restaurants, here and there. You would see the people, and it was a smaller community at the time. And when I would see them, I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks like my dad, And I'd never seen anyone who looked like my father the way that these people did. And so that is how I became interested in the culture. And then as a foodie, as soon as I started tasting Ethiopian food, I mean, that was it. So I wanted to know more and find out more about the culture and its wealth. And that was well before we connected at all.
Yeah.
So, and then of course I had a friend who's a dear friend of mine. I met her in the library with our little ones. And she happened to be from Ethiopia, and that just really bloomed into all of the connections and the deep relationships that we have now. Okay.
They have 5 babies, by the way, so
Yes,
I'm sure they will be in and out.
Sorry about that.
No, I
Gotta
love
go take
it.
care of the baby.
This is all about family and Blackness and all the wonderful parts about what it means to be community.
We've got all of that. We got all of that right here.
Well, I wanted you to finish.
So yeah, I mean, it's been a very long journey for me. Just starting with seeing people. My father was beautiful. He was just a beautiful guy, very handsome, and I didn't know who he looked like until I saw Ethiopian people looking like my dad, and lots of different versions of my father, but they all had this look, and that was the draw, the food, and then meeting people who became friends. That was my path to where we are now. And really, I have to say, this is probably, I don't know, maybe after you would introduce your part, but I also want to say, when we visited, all of that came together. All of those years of experiences, the people, all those small connections to a culture and a world that's so far away came into view with a new and just endearing perspective when we visited. Oh my gosh. I guess we'll get to that, but I'm just telling you. Oh, that was one of the best moments, one of the best experiences of my life. They have the most beautiful culture. Okay, you can go.
So I was asking her, just, as you guys meet, what are these connections that get you guys on this path? So is it as you meet her? Is it before? I mean, you're already kind of on this African journey because your stepfather is Nigerian. What happens when you guys meet?
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I mean, it's just like it's just like water. Like you just like two streams of water come, like you have like, two different rivers come, and they just mix together, and it's like what was in one, it just becomes part of the other. And
Mm.
that water, like if you have the same inclination, you guys are going to be rolling down the same hill anyway.
Yeah.
So, like we already knew, like I knew about her. I knew her mother. I know her mother. Her mother's still alive, but I knew her mother back then. Her mother was operating a daycare center, school, and I talked to her mother, and her mother was very much into our culture. And her mother is very Southern in her way, and that's our route to Africa here is through the South.
Absolutely.
And so
This
her
is the
mother
second
had,
time that's been mentioned.
yeah, yeah. So her mother came from that vibration. I didn't really know her father that well. I didn't know him at all, really. I mean, I knew of him when he was alive, but he passed, around the time I was getting to know Katrina. But also, I heard a lot about him. He had Malcolm X, records that they would play when they were kids, and he was into taking care of his health and herbs and just all the things you see in kind of like the positive, conscious Black folk, culture in America. That's what
Mhm.
Katrina. That's the cloth that Katrina is cut from. So that was also my fabric too. So I mean, it's like, hey, that's these things go together. So
Mhm.
it's not like I went down the street asking for, hey, you want to go to Africa? I mean, it's not like that, right? Like it's more like you just find people who got that vibration,
Right.
and then she had that. It was just part of everything, and she was studying, she was reading different things, she was reading, about the, and I was have always my whole adult life been into African spirituality, traditional indigenous African spirituality, by practice,
Which
not
one
just reading in a book.
specifically?
Hmm?
Which one specifically?
Kemetic, from ancient Kemet, from like northeast. And so and she was interested in learning about that and studying that too. But those are the things that I would look for. I definitely, the red flags would show up if somebody's like, well, they're not interested. I mean, after a while, there were certain things for me that would have been deal breakers, and those things weren't present in her. But I wanted a woman who cares about her culture, and who cares about where she came from, and who has a spirit of humility. Like I try to be as humble as I can when I approach other cultures, because I come from the standpoint that I don't know nothing. Y'all gonna teach me.
Hmm.
And she had the same humility. And so that's a match.
Nice. So you guys have a big family. Let's talk about your family. How many children do you have?
Well, so that was the other cross pollination, because her previous marriage and my previous marriage. So we had children that came together, and then we have our new one who made a cameo asking for some cherries
Yes.
about 10 minutes ago. And so total is 5.
Nice.
And so, yeah, so and one of the oldest, so her oldest, which is my stepdaughter, we just say daughter, like we're
Mhm.
not about the divisions. So she came to Ethiopia with us, and
Nice.
that was really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are you merging these values, this education in? I find myself sometimes struggling a little bit to remind myself that Solana won't get this. My daughter's name is Solana. She's 12. She won't get this through osmosis. Like you actually have to put the books in their hands. You have to introduce them to these ideas and cultures. How are you creating that in your household?
Yeah.
That is a very good question, and it kind of changes daily because the expectations of what we'll go back to is waning. Like I don't know what we're going to go back to in terms of places to go, in terms of education. I don't know what that's going to look like. So it's changing because we're trying to create that path, but where we started was you have to do those things very deliberately. Diversity is not just your skin color. Diversity is the voices that they hear. We have the Southern accent, the American Southern accent, and the Black American Southern accent. Those are very unique. You can't hear people speak like that in any other part of the world. It's very much unique to our culture. And so them knowing that and hearing that, the uniqueness of our culture has to be built into what you teach them. You have to find it and show it to them. Because
Mhm.
they literally won't get it any other way. And then, there's a lost opportunity. So, um, yeah. So to what you're saying, you have to do those things very intentionally. You
Yes.
have to weed out all of the non-diverse. I tell my little one, well, we can't watch that because that doesn't show enough of the people around the world. We have to watch things that show people from around the world. And that's, what the way they look, that's their voices, and that's their experience.
Yeah.
You can't just have one of those,
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess that's one thing that creates an environment where they have an awareness of more than just the very white. It's very white. It's a very white environment that would be created if you allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even to say, I mean, it is what it is. We all know, we know that this is our experience in growing up in the States. This is what you see. So you really just have to be very deliberate about countering that. What would you
Yeah.
say?
So yeah, I mean, like, concrete things. So number one, if you give your child an African name, an
Mm-hmm.
indigenous name from somewhere on the continent, automatically then that they are hearing something from an indigenous African language every day of their life.
True.
Amen.
And that has a name, sound has vibration.
Hmm.
When you say that person's name, Olu, whatever the name is, they're getting that vibration. That's number one. Number two, yeah, like my wife said, there's explicit things that you need to do in terms of programming. Some of these little shows are very, very, very anti-indigenous in general, not just anti-African, they're anti-indigenous in general, very, very much of a colonizer mentality. You gotta limit that stuff. And you gotta find the stuff on in terms of programming for young people. Um, like Achille, there's a
Yeah,
Achille
Achille and
ABC.
the
Yeah, I'm not talking about Achille and the Bee. I'm talking about Achille. It's like if you look up Achille ABCs, it's produced in East Africa, and it's like Kiswahili lessons. It was a lot of
Cute.
fun. Also, Bino and Fino from
I love
Nigeria,
Bino and
right?
Fino.
And
Bino and
so,
Fino. I'm
right.
watching it myself. I should have a child next
yes,
to me so I'm not embarrassed. That
but it feels
it's
good, doesn't it?
beautiful.
It
Yeah,
feels good. It
Yeah.
feels good
The,
to see
the
the rich
colors.
brown. Yes,
Yeah.
and to hear
absolutely.
those voices.
And they always have these little, they're always getting into something. There's always something to
Yeah.
work out. Here comes the
Hmm.
grandma. I love it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that stuff. African art, like I create when I came back from Nigeria, I learned how to make batik. And so I make batiks. I've made batiks through my adult life, and we put some around the house. But you can go to arts festivals like the Black Arts Festival in Atlanta or the Black Arts Festival in Denver, wherever you are, or order it online. Order that to have around your house is another way to intentionally put that, and then to talk to them about it. It's like not just the art, but who made this and what does this represent? The symbols.
Hmm.
Um, all of those types of things. There's also an app called UTalk, U and then TALK, and
Hmm.
they've got more African languages than any language app that I've ever seen for the iPhone and Android. So you
Wow.
got Yoruba, Xhosa, Zulu, Hausa, Igbo, Amharic, Tigrinya, Oromo. Um, I don't know if they have Tree from Ghana. I think they have Tree. More, just a ton of different African languages on there, and so you can set it on autoplay, and it'll just play the greetings, play whatever, travel, accommodations, food, how you're feeling. Like they have different subjects of speech, and
Nice.
that's one way we give that to our daughter. Like we're learning Amharic, and she can learn. She's been learning Amharic words through that app, and so that's another way is you got to get the language in the house, however, by
Nice.
hook or crook.
Yeah.
Kiswahili, they have Kiswahili in there, the most popular, and probably the only Pan African language.
Yeah, and
So
actually, you
yeah,
said something really important. I don't know if you should say that again, but you said food. The food is like really important
yeah, the food is super
in
important.
bringing culture, a
Yeah,
different culture into your
into your
home.
home, right, right, right. So yeah, it's got
Yeah.
all of that.
Always
So
eating different foods, trying
Yeah.
different foods, understanding the roots.
yep,
So,
understanding.
what you guys are thinking, and then this is going to now start getting into just some of the questions that I have. Like, how are you understanding Blackness and the Black diasporic experience versus Africanness and your Africanness. Because I think I hear like this really beautiful mishmash, right? Like that there is this very deep African American culture that we understand and we appreciate. And I hear when you talk about this, I'm from Texas, so, I'm partial to those conversations, but, there is a culture here. We've created something new and different. We're a tribe of our own, but then we understand ourselves as Africans, and I think sometimes what I'm hearing is that people have a hard time merging these identities or understanding how they play in their lives. How you guys understand Blackness in that way, African American identities versus your African identities, and how are you merging those in conversation or in your mind, just intellectually?
Can I start on this one? So
yeah, I was going to ask you to start on that.
I think that, well, not just I think, I know African Americans and New World Africans. When I say New World Africans, I mean any Africans in the Western Hemisphere, Brazil, Panama, Jamaica, Haiti, North America, Canada, United States. We are the world's first Pan-African people in the history of the world. We're the first Pan-African people. On the continent, the concept of identity is not Pan-African, it's local. Those two things at face value are inherently antithetical. So they don't mix, right? And you'll see that when Black Americans go over there. And when I first went to Nigeria, I was shocked. There's no concept of what the word black and white means nothing in Nigeria. Black in Nigeria means darker than your average Nigerian, and white in Nigeria means lighter than your average Nigerian. That's really what it means. The first time I heard of Nelson Mandela referred to as a white man, I was shocked. I was, what are you talking about? Like, it took me months to figure this out. Everybody is white there. If you're from Black Americans, they just call you the word for white, no matter how dark you are, because you're not from that culture. Yes. It's complex, right? It's really complex. So in terms of answering your question, in order to build that bridge, as a Black American, you need to learn how to speak the language of local. As a continental African, you need to learn how to speak the language of Pan-African. Right? So our language is Pan-African. Their languages is primarily local. Now, there's some exceptions. In South Africa, there's more of a sense of Black because whites have been there longer. The whole concept of race came from Europeans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So they don't people historically, no matter where you are in the world, most human beings did not think in terms of race. Race was created by Europeans as a way to oppress people. So indigenous Africans, they just still have the original worldview, which is like, well, I'm Hausa, I'm Igbo, I'm Fulani, and that's it, But there's a value, there's a value in the Pan-African thing because there is a common thread amongst all African peoples, and that's something I think as African peoples that we need to be waking up to as a whole. Cheikh Anta Diop wrote this book. He wrote a lot about the cultural unity of Black Africa. That no matter where you're from in Africa, if you're from what we now call sub-Saharan Africa, there are common threads that are common with all African peoples. And on the continent, that consciousness is not there as much. So that's my answer. My answer to you is that I think that both sides have work to do. We need to learn. Yes. And in terms of our work to do, in terms of being local, Black Americans going over to the continent need to understand that you learning a language is going to exponentially help you to understand those people better. When I went to Nigeria, my first thing is like, I want to learn Yoruba as much as I can. I didn't become fluent. I barely became proficient, but I learned enough to order some lunch. I learned enough to ask where to go.
The effort pulls people to you.
Pull people in, and I learned how to speak Pidgin English, which went really far because then I could go anywhere in Nigeria because that's like their lingua franca across the whole country, and that made me accepted as like I was not viewed as an American by the time I left. I was viewed as some in between thing, but definitely not all the way American. And there were certain times where I could pass for my Nigerian if I spoke impeccable Pidgin, like in Lagos somewhere. They would think, oh, he's half caste,
Yeah.
So that's our work. And then for, like I said, for the traditional Africans, they need to understand what Pan-Africa means.
Yeah, I think that this is a really powerful point because this experience, this Mayafa experience, has created something so special and so really beautiful because we are the unifiers, we are the bridge, we
Hmm.
are the ones that will help to create this new space. And when I started to really understand that this concept of blackness had to be introduced, and I think that there was a sense during independence, like there was a lot of talk around pan-africanism, a lot more. And I think the same way the 80s and the strive towards whiteness and money and kind of hit the US, it hit Africa, I think, in the very same ways. And so these threads of pan-Africanism kind of dissipated, and now we're kind of coming back to it. But there's this powerful role that I think we play as displaced people that will help unify us all. And I'm excited about that role that I feel like, I'm participating in, you guys are participating in, and to just watch, this happen, to watch these relationships build is important to me. And I'm excited when I meet other people. That's when I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to get y'all on the show so we can talk about this. So let's talk about the work you guys are doing, because you're doing some really interesting work. So what are some of the projects that you guys have going on specifically now? And I think mostly Ethiopia. I know you have some Tanzanian projects and some other things, but it's mostly an Ethiopian space that you're working in, correct?
It is. You want to start talk about your work with Tanesso?
Mm-mm. No, you go.
Well, so a couple of things. Like I was alluding to earlier, relationships is very important. When you're developing a relationship with the continent, and after having lived in Nigeria for a year, when we went to Ethiopia, we couldn't stay for a year. We just stay for like 3 weeks or so. Our first thing was just to develop the relationships because that's the foundation from which everything else is going to flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a software developer, so I'm developing a mobile game about global economic justice through the lens of the environment. And so this game, part of the work that I'm doing is I'm learning Amharic, and I'm a beginner. Don't come at me with a bunch, a whole lot. But
You're gonna
I'm a
have it all in
beginner.
your inbox.
Yeah, I am a beginner, and I'm learning the Fidel, which is the writing system, which is another powerful thing. If you want to teach your children something powerful, teach them Fidel. Those are the name of the characters, and this is one of the very few indigenous written African languages with an African alphabet. Not the Roman alphabet with the letters that we know here. It's his own alphabet, and this dates back to antiquity. So, but one of the things I'm building with this mobile app is a app that is going to be in several different African languages, and we're starting with Amharic. And it's just like having the thing so that young children in Ethiopia and Black America and everywhere else can go into this app and learn about playing. You play as an endangered species who's fighting to save the planet. And so my work is part of it, is just building the relationships with people in these different communities to say, how can we make this level, because there are different levels in different countries, and how can we make this level relevant to your country and your environment? In Ethiopia, the environment is like a really serious topic because deforestation has cleared off so much of the forest in Ethiopia now, which creating desert, and it's a very dangerous situation. And now they talking about they're trying to allow GMOs and other stuff, like really dangerous stuff. And so it's helping to educate people about the earth and the environment, and then making the communities healthy and sustainable through a fun game. I mean, it's not like beating you over the head with these like heavy academic subjects. It's all fun and you're playing around. And there's a lot of humor in it. But that's the nature of my work. Is I'm build socially conscious media, socially conscious video games, and starting with the countries that I know about. I mean, I'm definitely building in Nigeria level, and there's just different levels of different countries that we have. Tanzania. And so that's part of what we're going to be doing. The game's called Earth Cipher, and we'll put that in. We'll give that to y'all later. But that's part
Put
of
it
my
up on
work.
the screen so that they
No,
can
no,
come.
CIPHER.
CI. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. I'll create another
CIPHER.
banner.
Yeah. Thank you. That you surprised me with that. Look at Tanisha.
I'm very new to this. Like, for me, this is like chewing gum and trying to walk at the same time. Like, I really need to do one thing at a time, but my cousin has prepped me on how to like do these other things, but they want me to like look at the comments too. I'm like, absolutely not. We'll talk after because I can't.
It's a lot to manage.
I
Managing
can't
12
keep
is
up with all of
yeah.
that. And so it's CIPHER.
CIPHER, Earth Cipher, CIPHER. My company's name is Media Breeze. And so you can look up either one of those, mediabreeze.com or Earth Cipher, CIPHER.com. And you can see a little video. It's a work in progress. We just started the game, but you can see some clips of the game. And this is something your children are going to be able to play.
Nice.
And they can learn about the culture and they can have fun. And then it's a good alternative to some of the destructive video games that are made by colonizers. It's all about taking somebody's life or hurting somebody or hoarding all the money you can get, grab all the money. I mean, y'all can be about that, but that's not us. Like that's for, that shouldn't be us. And so the media that I make is to give our children something healthy to have.
Nice. Katrina. I know you're numb.
Oh gosh, it feels so odd. It's very awkward.
Hey, everybody! My wife went to the dentist early today. That's
I said that.
I know,
It's
but some
still-
people tune in halfway through the broadcast.
Okay,
So let people know my wife went to the dentist, and she reluctantly agreed to be able to be here.
She graced us with her beauty.
Oh, praise God. Well, I'm just really proud of you. I just want to say that I'm so proud of this guy. He works really hard with everything, but he has so much integrity with the work that he does, and with this project, it's a life work that is coming to fruition, and I just feel so proud of you.
Thank you, baby.
That we're here and we're looking at earthcipher.com. That is quite an accomplishment. So, yay! Good job, baby. Well, I don't know exactly how to come into this. I guess I will say that I am a rising health coach. I said earlier in the program that health and wellness is that's my wheelhouse. That's what I will be doing forever. And so on that path, because I do believe in learning and taking education to all new levels from the cradle to the grave, that's what I intend to do. And so in that journey, I am a rising health coach with Legacy Holistic Health Institute. And it's a company founded by a Black woman. And I'm so proud to be part of that legacy. The other work that I am doing right now is with a company that's actually, I'm going to call it a movement, because I feel like it's more of a movement that is based in Ethiopia with people who live there, as well as Black Americans who are living there. And I mean, the Ethiopian people who live there, Africans. That word, Tenisu, it means to rise. And what better way to start a movement than say, rise? I just love that. So this work is about creating partnerships so that we can be healthy, not just in one neighborhood and one household, but really across the continent, and creating those partnerships across the seas. So I'm in a really unique position right now because I started with Legacy first, knowing that it was my intention to do some global work. And Tenisu came up, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And I hope that you'll be hearing more about it in some of the activities that we'll engage in soon.
I hope so. So I have a couple. I love when I have Black love in front of me because I'm going to have to ask some questions about this. How important are Black relationships in this conversation? And what does it mean to have this marriage in the midst of this conversation around reclaiming and rebuilding?
Mm, that is that's a great question. I love that question. I think it's everything because rebuilding requires work. Rebuilding requires relationships. Rebuilding requires a plan, helpers, and all of that you find when you find a good partnership, um, whether it's in a relationship or outside of a relationship with the work that you're doing, it's golden. It is golden. And you can use that to take you far, and not just you, but to take all of us very far. You know, um, we is the poem of the century from Muhammad Ali. And that is the position that we are in right now. It's not just about the individual. This is a me and a we, and it's collective and it's together. So I think marriage is a very important part of that.
Mhm.
The togetherness,
Yeah.
the togetherness. You can't have, you know, what did they build? They build the bricks out of mud and straw. You can't just have one. You can't just have the straw. You can't just have the mud. You have to have the marriage and the working of both of those together to make the strongest brick. And so we're building.
Hmm.
We need that
Yeah,
for each
one
other.
hand can't clap.
One
That's
hand
That's
can't
right.
what
clap.
this. Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Sir.
also it's also about healing our lineages, I think,
Mm,
because when you're in a black relationship, in a black marriage, I mean, some relationships just don't work out, right? I mean, that's just the nature of relationships. But if you're in a good relationship where there's a sense of love, and and that you have that energy there, you have the opportunity to heal and to learn about these of the other lineages as a part of it's an extension of our empathy for other people in the community that also need
mm,
healing.
yes.
And what I
Mm,
mean by that is, like, when you marry somebody, you're marrying into another lineage. That lineage has issues,
Mhm.
right? There's stuff in there. There's domestic abuse issues. There's issues of the Ma'afa, people being separated from the families, and just like there's these memories that's like in your DNA of this pain.
Mhm.
You've got other issues in terms of all kinds of stuff relating to children and not having children, or the inability to have children, or whatever it is. So when you're healing with your 'cause relationships are work.
Mhm.
So when you're healing with your partner, you are also healing a segment of the Black community.
Yes,
You
yes.
don't
mm,
have that opportunity to do that if you're married to somebody. I mean, I never married or dated outside of my race. But if you do that outside of your race, you don't have that opportunity. You have other wonderful and beautiful opportunities if you marry outside of your race. That's wonderful, but you don't have this opportunity.
yeah,
And our communities need healing. We've got a lot of internal work that we need to do before we start building all these outside bridges.
yeah,
I mean, you can't do what you want, but this healing needs to happen here.
yeah.
And when you find somebody who you resonate with, that where that love is there. I mean, there's certain prerequisites that you have to have. But if those things are there, it's a great opportunity. And then you heal through the children, because then the
Mm,
children, they got their own issues too. So it's all healing. That's how I see it.
that's beautiful. I always tell people, like, at the end of the day, we know that race is a social construction. We know that one day we're going to circle back around and all be human beings again, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah,
one
yeah,
day that's
yeah,
going to happen.
yeah,
But
Right.
until that happens, there's layers and levels to this. And
Mhm.
what has to happen between Black people needs to happen between Black people.
yeah.
And it's the fundamental healing. And when you don't, those relationships are very complicated because you always have kind of this open wound that you're dealing with, and there's nobody to heal it through love with you because
Mhm.
they don't
Right,
understand it, they don't have it,
right.
you know
Mhm.
so it's
Yeah.
beautiful. You guys are beautiful, and I so
Thank you.
enjoyed this conversation. I'm very excited to continue to build with you guys and create connections. We really have this wonderful Pan-African coalition starting. Call it the global movement. And so I have one question that I ask everybody. And this show, Working Towards Blackness, is really about getting everyone across the world, all Black people, to understand Blackness as a political identity, to know that it doesn't conflict with your religion, it doesn't conflict with your tribe, it doesn't conflict with your language, but that it's a unifier and something that can collectively unite us for the benefit of all of us. And so, what is Blackness to you?
Oh my gosh, you saved that for the last question?
Well, I would say you want.
I'm still thinking.
I would say being Black is being the root.
Mm.
We are the root of humanity. And all the science is there to back it up. The DNA is there to back it up. The history is there to back it up. There's no disputing. Our DNA is what is the basis of everybody else on the planet. And that's what it means, is to be the root. The root is where we're the originators. Everything comes out of us. All the new creativity and the ideas and all these things and the innovation, all this comes originally comes from our people. And I also think that we are also the future, because I think that when white
Alpha
people
and Omega.
we're the alpha and the omega, because when white people understand that they came from the same people that they are trying to oppress now, we are all really one planet. And I think that there's going to be some reconciling going on there, and eventually some healing there, where they will start to understand that they can't injure us without injuring the entire planet, because that's what they've done. Actually, they've injured the entire planet trying to spite us, or trying to spite all indigenous people. And destroying the environment, all the things that they're doing, that eventually when they realize that we are the root and we're all one world and we're all one people, that's where the world will be going eventually. It may not happen in our lifetime, but we do have to put the seeds out there, and we need to work with them in a way that we're always leaving a door open for them to understand that. I'm not telling them they need to go put a dashiki on, but they
Please
do need
don't,
to.
actually.
Because right, but we do need to leave a door open for them to come back and heal what they've destroyed by mutating themselves so far away from the root of humanity. Somehow that needs to reconcile. I don't know how that's going to work. I think that's God's plan. I don't have the blueprint for that, but I do think that door needs to be open for them.
That's beautiful.
Well, of course, I agree with what you said.
You don't have to agree with it.
No, I do. I agree with that. And I would just describe it as I don't even like to use that term to describe myself, to be quite honest, because I feel bigger than that. And so for me, we know that the first human being was a Black woman. We know that we all came through that lineage. And so for me, Black women in particular, we are the carriers of the heart of humanity. And so when you say things, you said this too, but when we say things like, we are the ones who are going to bring it back, that it came from us. That's what that means to me. We are the carriers of the heart of humanity. And as Black women, it is our duty to share that heart. It is our duty to share that heart and to teach what it is to be human again. And I don't think that comes through bloodshed, because we've seen that already. Part of that, maybe, perhaps it does. But for our role, it's a very unique thing to impart humanity, one little embrace, one little piece of love at a time, one little piece of self-love. I think it's going to come through our self-love through Black women. Mm-hmm. And as Black women, as mothers, do you turn away your children? You don't turn away your children. If we're saying that we are the original mother, are we going to turn away these people who are bad actors and acting up? What does a mother do when the children act up? We find a unique way to love them and to teach them and to redirect them, but we're still there's still an opening, like you said, to embrace them when they come around. And so I guess that's how I see our walk. That's how I see our walk with humanity. That's how I see our walk as Black women. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Is that a burden?
To carry? I don't think so. Not for me. Not for me, it's not, because it's love. I find it burdensome to lock up my heart. That's the burden. It's not a burden to show how loving I am, you know? Of course, you have to protect yourself, and we're not talking about all that. There are things that you can do to protect yourself spiritually, and spiritually first, physically. You know, there's different levels of protection, but no, that's where the healing is. That's where you become divine. That's where you become the spear, where you are the one leading the charge. And people don't necessarily know that you're leading the charge. I mean, you don't have to say that. You are it. And so it happens. And that is not work. That is just the heart doing what the heart does. That's love doing what love does. And we carry that.
Amen.
And it is wonderful.
Hey.
A lucky man gets the benefit of all that divineness. You guys, thank you so much. Thank you very much for participating today. I think this is a worthy conversation. It was beautiful to hear your perspective. And thank you guys for tuning in to Working Towards Black. I hope that this brings healing, brings understanding, brings perspective. Please follow the global movement on Facebook. We are building a community that I really hope will be benefits to governments and benefits to communities all around the world. Make sure that you add me at T Barnes Global Lifestyle on Instagram, and we will see you on Thursday. We have another show on Thursday. So thank you guys very much. I'll see you guys later.
Thanks for having us, Tanisha.
Bye.